Welcome to Section 420, Talkin Yankees. Well, half the team's still on the injured list, but it doesn't matter because the substitutes are actually better than the starters. Now, the Yankees were seemingly in crisis mode, especially when Judge went down. I mean, of all the people to go down, he even went down with an oblique injury. And you're just at a point like, oh my God, what's going to happen to this team? I mean, no Judge, no Stanton. For a while, no Sánchez, but he did come back. No Andújar. I mean, missing all your big boppers, big hitters, and you're like, all right, how's this team going to function? But actually, some guys you wouldn't even think of stepped up. Some players that Cashman kind of signed and bought off the scrap heap have been contributing in a big way, and actually the team's actually more exciting to watch, mainly because, yeah, they hit the home runs occasionally, but they're playing a lot of small ball. I mean, these guys have been a great surprise. It's fun to watch. They look exciting on the field. And again, you're seeing like kind of real baseball. They're playing, singles, doubles, moving runners over, sacrifice fly, with less than 3 outs. Things you kind of do to, winning baseball, especially things you do in the postseason. Now, surprisingly, Miguel Andújar is coming back soon, which should almost be like within days. And it's kind of surprising to me because, he was diagnosed with a shoulder strain, which then became the partial tendon labrum. That kind of sounds serious. I figured there's no way he'd be back, and they kind of talked about, well, we'll give him, some rest and recoup, or he might need the surgery. He opted to sort of rest it a bit and give it a shot again. Look, I'm glad I'm wrong. I thought he was done for the season. He's going to try to go for it. It just, it just seems a little dangerous because when you talk about a little tear in labrum and Andújar, I mean, great play, but he has a very violent swing. Might re-injure that thing. Again, this might eventually lead to the surgery after all, and if it's like, well, if that's the case, you might as well do it. I mean, Gio Gonzalez has been great at third base. Over the long haul, I guess, yeah, Andújar is better, but if Andújar is only going to be 75%, you might as well just get the surgery. But again, maybe it heals, maybe I'm wrong. I hope I'm wrong because, again, of the two of them, of course, Andújar is the better player. It's just I wouldn't want him to, as a young kid, just go out there, hurt himself, and have something that, is going to bother him for the rest of his career. And in terms of the first base debate, well, it's clearly over. Luke Voigt's the winner. I was wrong. I'll admit it. Of course, shocker, Greg Bird gets another injury. Partial tear in the plantar fasciitis, saying he's supposed to be out till about May or June. Who knows with him? It's going to be a thing. He'll come back. He'll be nagging. So clearly he's probably going to be goner. And Luke Voigt's been incredible. I mean, only 1 month in the season, he already has 9 home runs. And it's not like he's at the bottom of the lineup where he's getting easy pitches to hit. I mean, he's batting in the number 3 spot pretty much. So you're getting like the best pitches. You're facing, you got a target on your back when you're the number 3 hitter, and he's still thriving. So clearly Voigt is taking this opportunity. Last season clearly wasn't fluke, and he has like some crazy streak going right now of like 40 games of getting on base, of getting hits. So he's the real deal. Again, with Bird, I was wrong, and maybe he comes back. I don't know, but at this point you can't even count on him because he can't stay healthy for 2 weeks. And the first of the big bats to come back has been Gary Sánchez, and he's been great with his home run swing. And just goes to show that last season he was definitely hurt, not the same guy. Again, average-wise, not hitting 300 or anything, but the home run stroke is there. And even though he missed a chunk of time, he's still leading the team in home runs, something you'll probably see for the most part of the year. And he's on pace to hit 35, 40 home runs. And for the catching position, which is very grueling, it's very unique to get a player to do that. So if he stays on the course, you're looking at a situation where probably he's going to be the all-star. And I'm just happy the Yankees didn't do anything foolish like trade him away in the offseason. And you got to love what you see from DJ LeMahieu at the top of the lineup. Now you look at him, well, he only has like 1 home run, but he's not a home run hitter. But you look at his 310 average, and again, he's just like a kind of a table setter guy. I mean, usually, let's say in the bottom of the lineup, the 8th or 9th guy gets on base, he does something. Either he moves him over, he singles in, he shortens up his swing, and he's just a good contact hitter, something that the Yankees haven't had in a long time. I mean, that's what you used to have back in the day with the late 90s Yankees with O'Neill, where there's Tino, Brocious, Bernie. I mean, yeah, they had power, but they were also okay with just getting contact and putting bat on the ball, and good things happen when they do that, versus just sitting back and wailing at some home runs, which, yeah, it's cool, it's awesome to highlight, but it's not going to come every often, and it's definitely not going to come in the playoffs. So you got to like the LeMahieu signing even more and more and more, especially when Didi went down for a while and Tula went down for a while. Well, then, he's having full time at second base, and this move, Gleyber Torres over the shortstop and so forth, that's been great. Even Torres showing a little more maturity, laying off some of those low pitches that he used to swing for. It's still going to happen. I mean, he's still a young kid, but you see him just maturing a little bit quietly in this period as he's been filling in for Didi. But LeMahieu, can't say enough. Great guy. This is refreshing to see a contact hitter. Very rare these days. Very rare. And if you notice, they're not using the term DL anymore, disabled list, because I guess that's offensive to some people. Part of the culture in there right now. So now it's IL, the injured list. A little shorter, though. You have the 10-day injury list versus DL used to be 15 days. But nevertheless, I don't know, it's just kind of crazy. I understand it may seem offensive to people that are physically disabled, but it's just been used so long. It's like it's ingrained in the sport. So to now to be like, well, you can't use that term anymore. It's offensive. It's a little ridiculous, but it's just the way things are now. But I can at least understand no dogs on the field. The Yankees also recently picked up Cameron Maybin, kind of a journeyman. He was supposed to be like a big hotshot prospect with the Tigers back around like 2007, 2008. Never really panned out to what he would thought he would be, and he's kind of been bouncing around. So, especially with Frazier going down and, the Yankees having all those injuries, Cashman picked him up just as like, a stopgap guy. Not terrible, but he's a guy you see that, once, Frazier comes back or when Hicks comes back, and if there's some early bumps in the road, it looks like both J.A. Happ, whichever one you want, and James Paxton is finally settling into the rotation. Looked great. I mean, it's pretty much resembling the Happ that the Yankees got last season. First couple of starts are kind of like iffy, but he looks like he's finally back to what we thought we were getting, as well as James Paxton when they got him from Seattle. Now, Paxton had a little knee discomfort recently, but seems like he's not overly alarmed about, so hopefully he's not like gone for 2 months. Maybe he might miss a start or two, which is not the worst thing in the world. You could bring up Loizaga just for a couple of spot starts, not a big deal again. But you kind of needed these guys to thrive, and because these were guys you didn't start the season with last year, so the fact that you had them on this year's starting rotation, it gave more meaning to the rotation that they would have overall everyone would have a better season and the team would have a better season. So good to see those two lefties contributing. And speaking of lefty, CC Sabathia hit a huge milestone, recording his 3,000th strikeout. And of course we'll get into it a little bit later, but now he enters a conversation where now is he a Hall of Famer? Tanaka is always a steady Eddie, but now you're getting this really surprise season from Domingo Germán. The season young, but Germán's already 5-1. But it's not just, the offense is like bailing him out all the time. His ERA, 2.56, and looking very Severino-like. So is this year's Severino surprise? Maybe. And I think it's part of the reason that, the Yankees haven't panicked with the Severino injury and made a crazy, stupid trade or, put someone in like Cess who just gets bombed all the time. Germán's going to be great. Now, again, he's never done this for a full season in the majors. I don't know how long it's going to last, but the Yankees are kind of holding on to it. And it's probably partially the reason they let Gio Gonzalez go. Again, it kind of went under the radar. The Yankees did pick up Gio Gonzalez, shortly after the Severino injury, just kind of as an insurance policy. But as part of the deal, they had to either bring him up, or to give him his release. And when it looked like, they had all the starters in place, especially with CC coming back and Germán pitching well, really didn't need Gio anymore. Again, I don't know why they didn't sign him in the first place, but it was kind of like a $3 million insurance policy. But they eventually cut Gio, and he found the home happily in the Brewers. So got nothing against Gio, but I don't think he would have been good here anyway in the AL East. I mean, years ago, he was in Oakland. He pitched in the American League. Then he was in the Nationals, where it's like joke. There's no offense. If you put him here in the AL East, he probably just would have gotten shellacked. So it was best, best for the Yankees and best for Gio that it didn't work out. And it's just great to see Germán pitching well. And one of the little good news about the AL East, it really hasn't been like a powerhouse now. The Rays are ahead of the Yankees by 3 games, but really, in like May, June, you're not really looking at the standings at that point. It really doesn't matter. You just want to be healthy and playing well and get a little momentum. And then once you get into like July, August, when you start really looking at the standings. But if you look at the competition, the Rays, okay, they've been very surprising, but it's kind of a no-name team. I know they have some great pitching with Schnell, but their ceiling isn't that high, where at best they're an 85-90 win team. And the Boston Red Sox are not the same Boston Red Sox from last year. So again, if the Yankees just get these guys back, I think they have probably a good chance of kind of eventually overstepping the Rays. So with all these injuries floating about, I figured I'm going to give you my top 10 worst Yankee injuries. Now, when I mean worst injuries, I don't mean like most gruesome, like a break. It has to do a lot of like the player, the situation they're in, what it cost them. So, for example, in the late 80s and early 90s, Don Mattingly was getting hurt like all the time. Now, you figure, it's career, it's bad to see like a Hall of Fame type of career go down like that. But also, those late 80s, 90s teams suck. So, like, his injury didn't have an impact. So, it has to do a lot about the player, the situation, and the impact. So, leading off, number 10. So 2004, Jason Giambi. Now going into the 2004 season, especially after losing the World Series to the Marlins, George Steinbrenner just got really pissed off. They went out, they traded, got A-Rod, and they just bolstered up the lineup, also getting Gary Sheffield, a great hitter, and plus they already had Matsui, they had Posada, they had Bernie Williams, they still have Derek Jeter, so you had this like super tremendous lineup, which also would include Jason Giambi, but early on the season, had some stomach illnesses, they weren't sure what it was, turned out to have a tumor, well first it was a parasite, which then turned out to be a tumor, related to PED use, it turns out. Now, luckily, Jason Giambi got over it. He even came back late in the season to hit a home runs to prove he could do it. But since he missed so much time, and perhaps it's a little punishment maybe, who knows, they actually sat him out. They left him off the postseason roster. And you just try to imagine what could have been. Have him in the lineup. I mean, he's like a 40, 45 home run guy. Have him in the lineup for the whole season with A-Rod, with Sheffield, with all these guys. They would have blown away the competition in the regular season, but you go to the postseason, especially against Boston, they choked that 3-0 lead. Again, you have Giambi in there instead of like Tony Clark. They probably pass the Red Sox and then go on to win the 2004 World Series. But it wasn't meant to be because Giambi had certain chemicals in his body which became a tumor. So kind of a weird thing and major bummer. 2012, Mariano Rivera. Now, what he used to always like to do before games, he would actually go out in the outfield and shag fly balls with the position players, something he always did. So, of course, A-Rod, of all people, hits one out there. Mo goes to get it, and he kind of twists and falls on the warning track, tears his knee, done for the season. Again, this was very early on in the season, and it was just as gruesome to see him in pain like that. He was pretty much done for the year. He did come back, but it's just to see one of the Yankee greats on the floor like that, and it's just tough sight. Now, it didn't really cost the Yankees because if you remember, they had Rafael Soriano, who it just happened. He's a closer himself, but he was the 8th inning guy since they had Mo already. So you were able to insert Soriano as a closer, and he did a good job. So it wasn't like the injury really cost the Yankees much, but you just kind of look at it, one of the great Yankees classic guys of all time, just to be hurt like that and just and have his season ruined that way. It was just, it was tough to watch, and it was, we never seen really footage of Mantle rolling and crawling on the floor that much. He would grimace a little bit, but to see him like that, it's just it was bad for Yankee history. Even though he's number 7, for this purposes, he's number 8, Mickey Mantle. Now, the 1951 World Series against the New York Giants. Now, this is Joe DiMaggio's last season, so you have Mantle in right, DiMaggio in his normal center. Willie Mays in Game 2 hits a fly ball. DiMaggio calls Mantle off. Mantle kind of veers off, and I guess back then they had the storm drain there. Mantle's leg or his foot gets caught in the drain, twists his knee, tears his ACL at the time. And the reason why it's a bad injury, it's just that, the Yankees went on the World Series, but that injury kind of hit Mantle for the rest of his career. Again, he had a great Hall of Fame career, was able to show some speed, but you could imagine what he would have been had he not torn his knee. And a lot of people, this sort of riff that, that DiMaggio caused it. He didn't really cause it on purpose. And, Mantle, again, he was the young 19, 20-year-old kid, and if the old man calls you off, you got to show respect, so Mantle did the right thing. It just bad luck that it went there. And, they didn't have this, the surgery that they have today. So, Mantle was able to get out on the field and have a great career, but, just that injury was always with him. And it's almost something like the Joe Namath. Like, you always think what could have been if, he's never had that injury. So, and I know Mantle, again, got the infection in 1961, kept him out of the 61 World Series, but that team was just so loaded, they didn't need him. They went to win the World Series without him. It was really the 51 that in itself wasn't bad, but you just think the impact it had for the rest of his career. So 2013, Game 1 of the American League Championship Series against the Detroit Tigers. Derek Jeter, in extra innings, breaks his ankle, fractured on the field. Now, it turns out he was actually playing with a partially torn ankle for a long time, and I guess, making a play, his foot eventually just snapped off the bone, and he had to be basically carried off the field. And again, like Mariano, it's just sad to see one of the great Yankees, especially this generation, just, really, hobbling in pain. Yes, he did come back, to play another season, so it didn't cost him. But just in that moment, and again, you lose the Yankee captain, goes down like that. Tough to see. The game itself was quite interesting. The Yankees were losing 4-0. Raul Ibanez, who in that postseason was on as a great home run tear, hits a grand slam to tie the game, but put the game to extra innings. And then eventually, unfortunately, in the extra innings, Jeter would break his ankle, and the Yankees would go on to get swept by the Tigers. And it kind of is a miserable, this moment for the Yankees because not only lose Jeter, but it was kind of like that old unit, which included people like Teixeira and CC, and I know CC's still around, but it's like that 2009 unit that the Yankees tried to squeeze another championship. That kind of put that put the nail in the coffin in that unit, and that's when you kind of got like the Jacoby Ellsbury and the Brian McCann kind of age, and the Yankees kind of beat them for a couple of seasons until you got the baby bombers. But really, that moment was highlighted by that Game 1 with Jeter breaking the ankle. Now, 2006, regular season game against the Boston Red Sox. Matsui playing left field, makes a sliding catch, but unfortunately damages his wrist, and for the first time since 1994, had to be taken out of the game. Now, Matsui was kind of like our version of Cal Ripken or Lou Gehrig. He was an Iron Man. He played in 1,250 straight games going back to the Yomiuri Giants back in 1994, And he kind of kept that streak going with the Yankees for 3 years until, unfortunately, he had that, the sliding catch, broke the wrist. And for maybe not here, not a big impact, but more for Japan. Again, he's an idol at the start. To him, not being in the game was like a big deal. So you take that into consideration. And if you looked at 2006 Yankees themselves, I mean, he had a wrist injury, and we'll get into him later. Gary Sheffield also had a wrist injury, and they would go into the playoffs to lose to the Detroit Tigers. That Tiger team just keeps knocking the Yankees out. Very annoying team. But anyway, yeah, they got back. But if they were at full strength, I had a pretty good feeling that that team, they kind of got a little moxie towards the end of the year. If they had both Matsui and Sheffield with their healthy wrist playing, they probably would have beat the Tigers, and good chance, they could have beaten the Cardinals in the World Series. But he had a broken wrist. And of course, speaking of Sheffield, same year, 2006, he collides with Shea Hillenbrand, damages his wrist, actually needs in-season surgery. Now, he did come back towards the end of the year, but, Gary Sheffield probably the most violent swing in the history of baseball, so this wasn't the same player. Now, in the middle of the season, the Yankees did pick up Bobby Abreu for right field to fill in for Sheffield, and Abreu was great. Kind of fit the Yankee mantra of just being an ideal number 3, hitter or lefty, very patient at the plate. And Sheffield, when he came back, was a little bit of the odd man out, and then he kind of got the riff with him and Torrey. Felt like he wasn't one of Torrey's guys all of a sudden. But again, Sheffield tried his best to what he could do what he can, whether it was playing first base, which, again, he came up naturally as a third baseman, but he just didn't have it really at first base, and there really was no place for him anymore. And, it's just kind of a shame because he put up some fantastic numbers for the Yankees, and that injury just kind of slid him a little bit, and then with the riff, in the offseason, they would go trade him off to the Detroit Tigers. Now, Sheffield would bounce around a little bit after that, did achieve 500 home runs, so might come an opportunity where he makes the Hall of Fame, who knows. But that season for the Yankees, again, I feel if they had a healthy Sheffield and a healthy Matsui, they could have went much farther. And again, I think pretty much convinced they could have beaten the St. Louis Cardinals. Now, Yankee owner George Steinbrenner always had a special place in his heart for Dallas Strawberry. Again, the former Mets star, maybe, I don't know, he just wanted to stick it to the Mets and have him succeed here, but he would give Strawberry chance after chance after chance. Bought him here initially in '95. And it kind of went on a year-to-year basis because you could never give Strawberry like a long-term deal because you just didn't know when he was going to screw up again. So again, '96 World Championship team. Was in '97, again, didn't play a hell of a lot. But it was really 1998 where he had a really good season, played over 100 games for the first time since 1991, contributed 24 home runs, was one of the, main players on the team, but unfortunately towards the end of the season, now this was the all-time great '98 Yankees that went 114 games. But he couldn't really enjoy the postseason because he eventually got diagnosed with colon cancer. And yes, he would beat the disease, that's great, but he wasn't able to participate in the postseason run. And it's just a shame because, he really helped to get the team there. And, well, I mean, it did open the door for Shane Spencer, and you kind of rode that out a little bit. But, it would have been nice to see Strawberry take advantage of that run because, again, he did contribute with 24 home runs on that team. Now, he would come back again in 1999, be a part of that championship team physically there. But unfortunately, at the start of the 2000 season, the Yankees did bring him in. But during spring training, whenever he got into one of his escapades where he was just roaming around, under the influence of something, so they cut him. But really, '98 was a shame because, again, one of the all-time great Yankee teams. Strawberry was good for that team, and just for him not to be there when they beat the San Diego Padres, it's kind of sad. Number 3, how about Jimmy Key? Now, the Yankees pried him away from the World Series champion Toronto Blue Jays, giving him a 4-year deal in 1993. And his first 2 seasons, fantastic with the Yankees. First going 18-6 in '93, following that up with a 17-4 season in 1994. Now, that was a very good Yankee team that probably would have made the postseason that year, but unfortunately they went on strike. Now came 1995 where the Yankees had another shot, but unfortunately for Key, got hurt early in the season, tore the rotator cuff, needed to be shut down for surgery. And, you kind of think of what would have been with that '95 team. Now, they did go make the postseason for the first time in 14 seasons. That was great. But unfortunately, they dropped to the Seattle Mariners in 5 games. But you just kind of had the feeling, had they had Jimmy Key on the roster for the full season, maybe they wouldn't have needed the wild card. They could have been the AL East champions. Or even if they were in there against the Mariners, he's a great pitcher, great postseason performer. They probably would have overcame the Mariners. I don't say they won the World Series in '95, but definitely probably would have gotten by the Mariners. The only good news is that he did come back in 1996. Wasn't the same pitcher, went to a 12-11 record, but at least in the postseason, he did his big moment was Game 6, the clinching game of the World Series, going up against Greg Maddux, getting the win with 2 tears in the rotator cuff, and then at least getting his championship. He would go on to pitch another season too with the Baltimore Orioles, but pretty much after that his career was done. But you just think back to 1995, Key was in his prime, and if they just had him on that team during that postseason run, they could have went much deeper. So 1925, the Sultan of Swat, Babe Ruth, got diagnosed with what they called intestinal excess. Well, as you know, Babe Ruth, a big guy. He liked to eat and nightlife. He liked to drink, like the carouse women. We all know the stories and the legends. But it looks like he went a little too far in 1925. Showed up to camp 270 pounds, very bloated. And this got to the point where he couldn't even complete a full season. Only played 98 games out of the 154th season now. Even though he missed a lot of time, he still relatively put up some good numbers. A 290 batting average, as well as 25 home runs, which for any player, especially that area, is still decent. But for Babe Ruth, those aren't good Babe Ruth numbers. But this in general was a miserable season for him. They had to shut him down for a long time. And as a result, the team only went 65 and 85. Again, a miserable season. And Miller Huggins, the manager, got so upset with him, actually fined him $5,000, which was remarkable at the time. But don't worry, Babe would come back strong in 1926, put up a good season. The Yankees did make the World Series in 1926, losing to the Cardinals, but then came that great 1927 season where Babe Ruth put up his infamous 60 home runs. And unfortunate number one has to be the plane crash that ended the career and the life of then Yankee captain Thurman Munson. Now, he was actually a registered pilot, and he got to go see his family in Cleveland. He would actually go back and forth from New York in his one little engine jet, and whatever issue there was, he crashed, he died, unfortunately. And it was just, the impact of it is that, not this that, some player died. I remember the Yankees had Corey Lytle, who also crashed a plane into a building in Manhattan and died. But this was like the Yankee captain. So this is like, Jeter or Judge crashing a plane. So humongous. And this is, fans adored Thurman, just a hard-nosed type of player. And because he came up, during the period when the Yankees were just terrible. Rookie year, 1970. And this early on, those early 70s teams that stunk just before Steinbrenner, bought them and transformed the whole organization, bringing in Reggie and all these other free agents. Thurman was that guy. So he was also there to enjoy, the championships of 77, 78. Even was the MVP of the season of the 1976 season, but unfortunately the Yankees did get swept by the Cincinnati Reds. But fans adored him, hard-nosed type of guy, played hurt, didn't matter. And yeah, his career was on the decline in 79, but it really didn't matter. He was still their Yankee captain, and it was just a big shocking moment. And they had the game against the Baltimore Orioles, sort of the funeral game where they went to bury him in Cleveland, and he came up and played a game at Yankee Stadium. And Bobby Mercer, who was actually Munson's best friend, and gave the eulogy at the funeral, had a key decisive home run. And that was one of those Yankee magical moments. But again, to see Thurman pass away like that, it's such a young age, and having a family all that, very terrible. And the Yankees for a long time kept the locker in the locker room for Munson, even though he wasn't a team anymore, just to show how special he was to the organization. Now on the bright side, and to change topics, on April 30th, 2019, CC Sabathia became the 17th pitcher and only the third lefty to record 3,000 strikeouts in his career. And he's a very good pitcher for a long time, but is he Hall of Fame worthy? So we'll take a look at it, we'll weigh the pros, the cons, and I'm going to let you know why that I think he is. Well, he did announce that 2019 this will be his final season, so he has a chance to add on some wins. Obviously, he's not going to pad a bunch. Only thing that could hurt him is maybe if he has some really bad clunkers, he could raise his ERA. But overall, I don't think the season's going to make or break it. So it's basically you add a few more wins and maybe lower your ERA a little bit. You give yourself a better shot. And we look at his all-time win-loss record of 247 wins against 154 losses. And again, we don't know how this season is going to end up, but it's just about 100 games over 500 for his career, same as Mussina was. And again, pitchers that usually have 100 games over for a lifetime of career generally get in the Hall of Fame. Now, one of the knocks against him could be the ERA. Lifetime 3.69. Now, currently in this season, it's 2.66, very low. So if he keeps on that pace, maybe he could bring it down a little bit, helps make his case even more. Putting 2019 aside, he's had 14 seasons of double-digit wins, 3 times winning 19 games, and of course, one time in 2010 winning 21 games for the Yankees. 6-time All-Star, but not only good in the regular season, pretty reliable in the postseason as well, with a career 10-7 record, ERA of 4.31. Now you say, yeah, the ERA is a little high, but you got to imagine, you're pitching in the playoffs, you're facing the best of the best in terms of the hitters. But he really earned his stripes in 2008. Now, not with the Yankees, actually mid-season from the Cleveland Indians, he was traded to the Milwaukee Brewers. But going down the stretch, he literally willed that team into the postseason, going 11-2 down the stretch, pitching literally on 2 days rest. Now, his time with the Brewers was very short, but when he was there, he was considered the ace. And that was usually the case with CC Sabathia for most of his career. When he was with Cleveland, he was the ace. When he was with the Brewers, he was the ace. And when he was with the Yankees, he was the ace for a lot of those seasons. So you have to take that under consideration. The Yankees would sign him anyway to a big money contract, but a lot of people were like, ooh, he threw a lot of innings in September and August. So you really want to sign this guy, but the Yankees did bank on it, and it did pay off. Of course, again, in the first year as a Yankee, he helped propel them to get a World Series. Not only in 2009 the World Championship run, going on short rest a lot of time and being dominant, but probably his best moment was Game 5, 2013, the American League Division Series against the Baltimore Orioles. Wins a decisive game at Yankee Stadium, goes on the mound, throws a complete game, and knocks the Orioles out, and the Yankees went on to advance to go against the Detroit Tigers. And he won more than 200 games with two different organizations, the Yankees and the Cleveland Indians. Now, what hurts Sabathia a little bit amongst the writers is going to be the seasons between 2013 through 2016 when he was kind of transitioning, again, getting a little older, a lot of velocity left the fastball, and he was kind of transitioning from a power pitcher to a finesse pitcher, and that took a while. Plus, he was having the weight issues and the knee issues, and a couple of seasons, he was just done early because he just couldn't put any more pressure on the lead, so he would try to lose weight, but then he couldn't pitch the same, so he would gain weight again. Kind of a rough period. Overall, going 32 and 39, also hurting his ERA, but luckily he did bounce back in 2017, posting a 14-5 record, and then in that Game 5 divisional series on the road against his former team, the Cleveland Indians, pitched well. I mean, he didn't get the win to start the game, but went 4 innings before he got yanked out, and the Yankees would go to upset the Cleveland Indians that season. And again, he was very dependable. Probably, maybe it might be his last hurrah Yankee moment. We'll see what this season brings. So we'll see how the baseball writers judge his under 300 career wins, as well as a kind of a highish ERA. But again, such like Messina, I think the baseball writers will consider the airy pitching. Again, from 2001 to 2008, before the Mitchell report came out, again, you had PED use all over the place. You had steroids, home runs running rampant. He was pitching through that and putting up some good numbers, some wins. Yes, it affected his ERA a little bit early on, but again, he was successful in thriving and becoming the ace of the Cleveland Indians at the time. And then, also, we're in this era of the bullpens now. So a lot of times they're taking starters out early, not letting them go into the 5th or 6th inning, or a lot of times, you leave the game with a lead and the bullpen guy comes in and blows it, where back in the day, maybe you just did a complete game and you got the win. No one cost you a win. So I'm sure, Sabathia had a lot of those along the way. So those are things to consider. But when you just look at the whole body of work, I mean, his whole career, he was a starter. Not one of these guys that came up and he's like back and forth to the minors, and he's a reliever, and he's a starter again. I mean, he's always been a starter. And yeah, maybe, he's not like a Clemens guy who was like an ace, every single year, but for most of his career, he was considered the ace. And just look at some of the accolades and the awards. 2007 Cy Young, 2009 World Championship with the Yankees, 6-time All-Star, and of course the creme de la creme, again, hitting that 3,000 strikeout plateau, which all but 2 pitchers who have gotten in, and I think Schilling will probably get in eventually. And you know what, maybe even Clement gets in, maybe on his final years, just like they're keeping him out just for punishment. So I think you could count on CC Sabathia being in, not a first ballot like Mariano would be, but it'll probably take him 3 or 4 years. But I think the writers will eventually put him in. Oh, sorry, bro. Now, whether CC goes in as a Yankee or a Cleveland Indian, it'll be up to debate. He spent a lot of time with both teams, but kind of see what he did with the Yankees. I mean, he won the World Series with them. He spent a little more time with them. So when that cap does go on his head, probably should go in as a Yankee.